Welcome, welcome, welcome one and all. In this session, we're going to start looking at module development. Now, the obvious place to start is with Foundry's Introduction to Module Development page. However, we are not going to do the obvious. We're going to first of all set up all of the infrastructure around the module development that will, in the long run, make our lives a bit easier. So we are going to start with GitHub. Now, you could also use GitLab or indeed your own version management system, but for the sake of this video, we're going to use GitHub. It's very popular amongst the module development community. Okay, so we are going to start with a GitHub account. I would suggest you create your own so that you can start using this straight away. Once you've got an account, what you want to do then is go to your setup for your user. Okay, so we go to our setup and we go to settings, and we are going to want to add an SSH key. Now, this is going to allow us to access our repository easier in the future as we do our development. So we want to go to the SSH key, and if you are unsure about how to create SSH keys, then just follow this link and it will show you everything you need to know, in particular generating a new SSH key. Okay. Now, I've already created one, so coming over to my desktop. Oh, just a quick note, I do everything in a Linux environment. And therefore all of this documentation is going to be relevant to at least a Unix-like environment. It should mostly work on Mac OS. However, with Windows, you're going to either want to use the Windows subsystem for Linux, or you can just create a virtual machine, install a basic Linux installation and use that. Okay, so on your Linux environment, and you'll have created your keys. I've put mine into the SSH directory, and the one we're interested in is that public key there. So if we just cat that out, helps if you put the directory in. So we're going to cut out the public, okay, and what we're interested in is this line here, which starts with this SSH and ends with our email address. So I need to copy that, and then I go back over here and I'm going to enter a new SSH key. I will call this my user key. Okay, it's an authentication key. You could make it a signing key. It's an authentication key. We'll cover signing later. So we go and we just enter that public key. Now, the public key can be owned by anyone or be shown to anyone. It's really not a big deal if people know it. In fact, it's kind of the point. That's why it's called the public key. The bit you need to keep secret is the private key. So I'll add this SSH key. Okay, now it's asking for my passwords. Okay. Right, so now I've got my key registered. Okay, we could now just get on straight away and start creating repositories. Okay, so you can see here there's a repository, and in actual fact I've already got one that I used earlier. So we could start creating repositories using just our standard account, or we can create what's called an organization. So you can go into organizations over here. Okay, and you can create a new organization. You can see here I've created one already called Mondarth. Okay, so I can now switch this into my Mondarth account. Now, the advantage of using an organization is that it has a whole new level of stuff put on it for working in teams. So if you are ever likely to invite other people to help you in actually developing the code beyond the simple sort of pull request structure, then you really ought to create a organization. The other reason for doing it is it creates a nice namespace. Okay, so I know that all the repositories in here are related to my Mondarth project. Okay, so we've now got this, and this now gives me the opportunity now of sort of creating repositories for Mondarth. So let's go to repositories. Okay, so I'm going to create a new repository. And as you can see, this allows me to select the Mondarth namespace, if you like. Yeah, I could switch back to my Ulinar, or which is my personal one, or I can stay with Mondarth. So we'll stay with Mondarth, and this is going to be a Foundry module, and the object of this is to extend the theatre of mind kind of idea. Now, there is already a theatre of the mind module in Foundry, and it's perfectly fine, and it does what it set out to do. But I want to create something a little bit more sophisticated. Similarly, a lot of people, what they do is they use something like Monk's active tiles, and they will put tiles onto the edge of the scene, make them invisible, and then use those like buttons to control the scene. And again, that's a great way of doing things. I simply want to put it into a nice interface, which means that I don't have to clutter up my scene with lots of buttons that I only are using to control the scene. I can simply pop up the interface and have a more sophisticated set of controls. So we're going to call this, we'll call this Theatre of the Mind. Let's just call it Theatre of the Mind and see. Well, actually, what I'll do is, in order to, although it's called Theatre of the Mind in here, we're going to actually call the module something slightly different, but Theatre of the Mind. Okay, and we'll give it a description, which is a Foundry VTT Theatre of the Mind. Let's call it Theatre of the Mind Manager. Okay, and I'll make it a public repository because everyone can use it. Yes, I will add a README. I will add a git ignore as well. Now, the vast majority of this project will be a node project because it's basically a Foundry module. So what I can do is I can go down here and there we go, node. And that will just add a whole load of git ignore. Well, we'll cover git ignore slightly later because we're going to add some stuff to it. Okay, so now the license, MIT license needs to be common. The MIT license is basically you can do what the hell you like with this, and frankly, why not? Okay, so now it's telling us here that it will set main as the default branch. You can change the name, but why bother? So we create the repository. And so now we've now got our Theatre of the Mind, and its creator does a license file and a README. So the README is basic at the moment, and the license file is just the contents of the MIT license. And we've got a git ignore, and the git ignore just contains the standard ignore files that are useful for ignoring all the rubbish that you will accumulate with a node project. Stuff that you don't want to control in source, basically. Okay, so that's our repository up over here. So now we can select here and we can say, right, I want to make a clone. Now, I could use HTTPS, but I'm not going to. We've just set up an SSH key, so we're going to use the SSH link. Okay, so we'll copy that to the clipboard. and then back over here on our desktop, on our terminal, I'm going to just do git clone, okay, and we're just going to clone Theatre of the Mind. Because this is the first time I've accessed things on here, it's going to ask me to confirm that fingerprint. So I go yes, and so now I've now got a Theatre of the Mind. So if I go into Theatre of the Mind, okay, I've got the license and I've got the README, and if I do a listing of all of them, you can see I've also got the git ignore, and the .git is simply the repository. I won't go into detail about using Git at the moment, so there's that. So that's it. Okay, we've now got this Git repository cloned onto the local machine so that I can start editing it.